Hello and welcome back. All right, so I apologize. I had to restart and I started in a very similar location, not far from the last one, just randomly. This is a worse spot, I think. I'm not sure what's going to happen to this guy. We're going to have to get him out of there. But I wanted to really quick run through their UI, and I'm going to make this as concise and specific as possible. I'm not going to go into huge detail, but I'm going to talk about what's going on. What are all these buttons? What does all this stuff do? So first of all, you got your characters in the center here. This is your like squad menu or your your squad menu. I guess that's what I would a good way to refer to it. You can add additional squads later and have characters. You can have multiple characters in different squads, and they'll have different tabs here. We'll see that later when once we get more people. But this is what it looks like. You can see your character's name, his faction. So that may seem pointless to you, but if like for instance, I can click on any of these NPCs walking around, and it'll tell me what he is, what his faction is. I can see what he's doing. I can see, you know, what his stats are, at least like the baseline ones, and see what's going on with them. I can click on these other guys. I can see what their run speed is, which is important for me to know whether I can get away from them or not. So, anyways, this is all useful information you can have, but mostly you're going to be looking at it for your own people. So you notice I click this to look, expand this little menu. Usually you don't need all that additional information, but it can be useful to look at. So um, we have our state. Like his goal right now, his state is normal because he's healthy and everything's good. These guys are all normal. You can see like if they're critical or whatever after you've had a battle, see what's going on with different people. Um, I can see my goal is aimless. This guy has stuff he's doing. These guys are static town guard, following leader. They'll be doing different things. If as you give your character things to do, for instance, I'll tell him to move over here. He's got a move order. It'll change. This will change if he's got a job to do. He's doing medic, whatever. You can see what people are doing because sometimes you might be like, "Hey, what's that guy going to do?" Oh, and it'll tell you here. Encumbrance is pretty straightforward. Shows you how encumbered you are. You can see how much athletics XP you're getting, strength XP, toughness XP rate, which I think is governed by your race. KO point, very important to understand what this is, which we'll talk about in I think another video because it requires a pretty detailed explanation. Basically, this is determines if you go how hurt you can get before you go into a recovery coma, and don't get back up after you go unconscious. Run speed, you can see your run speed. Different things will impact that, like equipment and encumbrance. And you can see your hunger rate, which things like the race and encumbrance will impact that. You have your attack, your defense. These I think are all pretty self-explanatory what they are. Toughness in Kenshi determines how tough your character is. It helps with whether they bleed out fast, how hurt they can get and still get back up. This is a critical one, and it'll show you here. There's different things you can do to try to increase this faster. In game and even in vanilla Kenshi, there's like some key actions you can take to try to get your toughness to go up. And then your dodge. Your dodge is mostly used for martial arts, although characters do seem to dodge sometimes in melee weapons combat as well. But that is your dodge, and that is impacted as well by equipment and encumbrance. All right, so then you have over here tells you your status. You're pretty healthy right now. You have four, let's talk these guys real quick. You have four critical body parts: blood, head, stomach, and chest. All four of these will determine if they go below zero, your character is going to go unconscious. That doesn't have to do with the recovery coma thing I mentioned. We'll talk about it in more detail later. But if these, just know that if these go below zero, your character is going to go unconscious. Now, if and then a timer will start, and depending once the timer is over, depending on how low below zero it is going to determine whether they go into a recovery coma or they wake up and can get back up and heal themselves or continue fighting or whatnot. All right, that's all I'll say about that for now. Now we got our limbs. So the key thing to know about limbs is you need both of your arms in order to fight with heavier weapons, like bigger, larger weapons. But most importantly, it's good to understand because it's a little confusing. Your left arm is critical and needed in order to carry teammates. So you need it to carry teammates. If this is crippled or goes below zero, it'll be crippled. You can't pick anyone up, or you can't pick someone up that's like a bounty on their head that you just fought in battle and knocked out, but your arm got broken in the process. You won't be able to carry them to turn them into the police. So just keep that, and you can't carry your friends to put them in a bed, etc. That's what left arm is important for. Right arm is mostly important for combat in that you fighting with weapons. So if this gets crippled, and you'll switch over to just doing martial arts. You have to have a right arm to fight with the weapon. So if this gets crippled, your character will switch over to just fighting with their like kicking and punching with their left arm. And then you have your legs. If these get crippled, you will be or go below zero, you're crippled and you'll only be able to crawl across the ground until you heal up or get fixed up. Okay, so that covers that side. Let's go over here. The floor thing, we'll talk about that more later. That's just so that when you're in an interior of a building, you can switch floors to tell a character to move around and see what's in the building on different levels of the building. This one here is pretty important. This is telling your character how fast to run. So this is sprint. You have like a squad move at the same speed, but which is a little confusing to use. I'll demonstrate that at a later point in time, how that works. And you have walk, jog, and run. So you can change how fast they're moving. You might need to do that if you have all your other characters following one character and maybe he's faster. You might need to slow him down so everybody can keep up with him. Things like that. There's other ways to manage that as well, but you can basically just change how fast they're running. Now here you got obviously your pause, your play at double speed, play at triple speed. You'll probably be playing with these. I use these a lot to like speed things up when I'm walking. This is just like any other game where you can accelerate to faster speed. Sometimes you have to be careful and be ready to respond to something that's happening because you can get overwhelmed and get in a situation, really something's happening, and not react fast enough. That can happen. Here you got your money. This has your day, the day it is, or days in game, and your time of day. This basically, Kenshi is a 24-hour clock, so it'll go. It's military time, so it'll go from to 2,400 hours every day. I think between 2,300 2,400 hours is when the sun sets, and then between 0500 and 0600 is when the sun rises in the morning. This is your build menu. That's what that button's for. You build that, bring that up to build different things like a campfire, which I'm not going to do now, but that's what that does. If you're in it, you can just hit escape to get back out of it. Your inventory. Let's talk inventory real quick. You just have a bunch of different slots. Certain characters can wear certain things and not wear certain things. So this guy, for instance, doesn't wear shoes because these guys don't have feet. They just have kind of like basically like stick legs. Um, and you have a backpack. This is where you would have a heavy weapon or a crossbow. This is where you could put like a smaller sword, like a katana or whatnot. Um, you have your shirt slot head. These are all pretty self-explanatory. This will show you how much weight you're carrying and whether it's affecting you. Right now he's weightless. Tells you if you're in disguise. Tell you what slave, if you're a slave of someone, and how much you look like a slave. So, for instance, if you're looking like a slave, you are more likely to get spotted as a escaped slave if you escape slavery. And so you want to keep your looks like a slave factored low. These are all your stats, which we'll talk more in detail about later, but you can go in here and see. You can even, while you're doing things, kind of watch the progress bar and see how fast it's going up or whatnot. Like if they're doing training or if you're in a fight and you want to see, okay, you can watch the melee attack and see when they get hit or they hit people, like how much these things are going up. The map, we'll talk more in detail about the map in the next video. I think the next video, and we'll figure out where we're going to go. I'll give you some pointers on like kind of like what to expect if you want that. I'll make that its own video just so that if you don't want to know things and be surprised by stuff, you can just go exploring and find out what's what. And then we have our tech menu. We'll talk about that again later. This is just where you would queue up jobs for um, research. So you can click that to get to it here. Your squad menu, again, I mentioned you can create additional squads. You can rename your squad. So I'll rename this one to Zog, and we'll go into do more details on that menu at a later date. You have a help menu. Cool. Um, the help can be helpful, I suppose, if you don't know what to do. You can go through and read stuff and see what's going on, and it might give you some details. I think when you're playing the game for the first time, those will pop up by default when at certain points in the game. All right, now it's the last thing we'll just talk about real quick is the last part over here. So you'll see I've assigned this guy the medic job. The way I did that was I hold it's the first thing I always do for everybody. You'll see you have a medic button down here. You can just click it. Like right now, he doesn't have a meds kit. I clicked it. He's like, I don't have a med kit. So what you can do is just click this and tell him to go do medic if he needs to. But I always give people the job. So you can do different jobs, which we'll do more of that later. There's ways to kind of like automate some of the things. Like you can do a lot of just one of the things I like about Kenshi, I find kind of fun once you build a base, is you can sort of automate their what they're going to do, and you can kind of just let it go and like watch them do their thing, and you can get like manufacturing kind of automated, so people are making armor and tool, the resource mining the resources, doing you can kind of automate the whole process, which is kind of cool. But at for now, I'm just going to give him the medic skill, and the way I did that is I held the shift button. You can take it away by just deleting it or clicking the X, but I hold the shift button, click medic. I highly recommend you assign everybody the medic skill or medic job first and foremost when you start the game. And when you recruit new people, just tell them to do medic. It's important. That way they'll heal people if they don't have, even though he can't heal himself because he doesn't have a medic kit. When I get a med kit, I'll be able to. He'll automatically just do it. Then you have rescue, which is to tell people to rescue people, pick them up. Like I mentioned, the left arm you can't if you don't have a left arm, but you can go rescue people and pick them up and carry them to safety, or carry them, put them in a bed, or carry them to the next town if you're out in the wild. So and they're KO'd. So that's what that job you can assign it as a job, which I'll go ahead and do, or as you'll see it added two jobs. It said find and rescue, find and put in bed. So it's basically going to go find people, teammates that are down on the ground, pick them up, and if there's a bed nearby that he can put them in, like or a sleeping bag, he'll go ahead and put them in the bed so that they can heal up. Beds are kind of a medical item that you need. You need to be able to sleep when you're really hurt to heal up. And then prospect we'll talk about later. That's used for like finding resources and seeing what resources are in the area. Now, I'll go through these real quick. Block basically allows you to tell a character to not really engage in combat, but try to survive and block attacks incoming. He won't really fight and get XP fighting, but he will get a bonus to whatever his base melee defense skill is and attempt to block incoming attacks. So that can be useful if you have a weak character fighting alongside some stronger characters and he's really getting hurt. You don't want that to happen. You could turn this on. I don't really use it very often, but it can be useful. Hold, we'll talk about more later, but that's kind of just telling a character once you tell them to move, just to stay in that location and not move in and attack. What's really useful is with crossbow people. I use that to tell them, okay, go to this position and kind of hold that position and shoot at stuff while my other guys are fighting. That's really how it's mostly useful. Passive, you can click this and turn it on to tell a character basically they won't purposely engage in combat unless they're attacked directly. So you could turn that on for like in your home base. It's useful to turn on for like your smiths and things like that. So if your base gets attacked, they don't go out and get into the fight if you don't need them to. Sometimes your base is small and weak enough that you need everybody in the fight, but if you're strong enough, you might just tell them to be passive and not fight unless someone attacks them directly. What that's useful for with like things like smiths is because if they get hurt, they can't their crafting skill gets impacted and they might make crappy stuff for you. The other reason it's good is like if you're in town and like say you have somebody sneaking around and thieving and they might get caught, you might want to turn passive on for your other characters so they don't go and because they see your one character who got caught or seen by the police or somebody and they're getting attacked. If you put passive on, your other characters won't go and get involved and also get beat up by the police and everybody gets put in jail. So that's another, we'll go into more detail, like, but that's what basically what that's there and what it's for is it's useful. So many times jobs, you can turn jobs on and off. You'll notice these jobs, normally if I had another job, um, that would go. I was just going to see if I could assign a job real quick. No, I can't. We'll do it later. But basically, what that does is that will allow my character to not do his jobs. If he was doing a job, I want him to stop. Oh, our base is about to get attacked. Let's tell everybody to stop doing their jobs and go up here and get ready to fight everyone off. It can be useful. The one thing I'll point out is it's cool. It doesn't uncheck or gray out the medic and like health important jobs. It only uh, will disable them from doing jobs like say they're mining or weaponsmithing or things like that. You can just click that. They'll still do medic and all that stuff. Ranged, you can turn that on and off. That's useful for if you don't want your people with ranged weapons to use them, which could come into play sometimes. You don't want them to. You don't want them wasting their bolts in a certain situation because you don't want to run out, or maybe you just want to train their melee combat, so you could turn that off. Taunt is just it's in order to get people to taunt enemy characters to come and attack them. So your stronger characters, you can turn that on so they direct more attacks towards themselves. And then, of course, sneak will use a lot, a lot, a lot. So sneak is basically going into this sneaking mode, and we'll see if we can get his. I don't know what these guys are going to do to him because he's not a human. Okay, so I'm in sneak mode. We'll talk more about that later, but this is how you just turn that on to sneak around. This is basically showing me that all these guys can see me. So he's not really sneaking, but he's trying to. Um, so that pretty much does it for the UI. I think that's pretty extensive. I hope that explains some things. We'll go into some more detail in how some of the game mechanics work and how to read what's going on in here when you get into certain situations. But I think next I'll probably talk about where I'm going to go and what this guy's going to go try to do. And we'll talk about the map a bit. All right. Until next time. Thanks.